And Congressman, I thought that there was a lot of agreement on both sides of the aisle that raising taxes in a slow economy might be counterproductive.
Well, you would think there'd be that kind of agreement that it's counterproductive, but this looks like, by the numbers we're hearing right now, about a $1.4 trillion tax increase. And to expect there's going to be growth while you're punishing the producers with this kind of massive tax increases, I think is way too optimistic. And the very idea of reaching into the Iraq budget at the time when we have achieved a definable victory there and putting that at risk is another thing that Americans should be concerned about. So I'm very worried that Keynesianism run amok has manifested itself in this huge budget that's been presented or about to be presented by President Obama.
You know, Congressman King, here's what I'm worried about. I watched the president the other evening and I thought, you know what? Great speech. He does a fantastic job talking to the American people, but it reminded me very much of Clinton's first speech. And the thing that reminded me of it is that he's trying to accomplish too much at the outset. You know, let's focus on one problem at a time as opposed to trying to reform health care at the same time that we're trying to fix housing and the financial system. Is he doing too much?
I think that's the balance that they have to draw. And when you look at the administration, they have to know about the mistakes of the Clinton administration overreaching. Rahm Emanuel is in there as chief of staff, Hillary Clinton as secretary of state. And so I think that there are a lot of promises that were made. I think it was a huge, very reaching speech. It was the whole composite of the wish list that they've had. But at the same time, if they can't get a handle on this economy, none of it is going to be able to sustain itself over the long term. But I think that they have a real problem with impulse control. Their wish list has come out in nearly everything, including the omnibus spending bill, this budget, the stimulus plan, and I don't think the American people realize what they signed up for when they cast their ballots last November.
I'll tell you, we talk amongst ourselves, and we cover financial news on a daily basis, and we're even having troubles keeping track of, you know, the $700 billion TARP plan, the 787 stimulus plan, $400 billion omnibus plan, $600 billion raise. I mean, are you? And I know the 5th district in Iowa that you represent is the most Republican part of Iowa. What about those people that your fellow members, though? Are they hearing from their constituents, especially those from the left side of the aisle, that these numbers are starting to worry them?
Well, I could go back to the district and look for people that think this is a good idea. We have perhaps the most senior district in America. They remember the Great Depression. Some of them, their farms were saved by FDR plans, but they also realized the New Deal was a bad deal on balance. And so we're looking at something a little bit differently. They're concerned about the national debt as a percentage of GDP. It's about 10%. This budget takes it up to about 12.7%. I would argue that Obama's plans, the consumption of the GDP by the federal government under FDR was 3.4%. When he left office, it went up to 12%. If we adopt all of Obama's policies, the federal government will be consuming 31% of GDP, and I don't know how the free markets can survive with that big of a take by just the federal government when you've got the political subdivisions that also need to operate as well.
Congressman, this is Tracy Burns. My question is, all this government involvement, many will argue, is needed right now. I'm not of that camp, but if that be true, my concern is, how do you get out? Once we start getting involved, we put our hands in the banks, the government puts their hands in basically everything. They raise taxes, they cripple small businesses. This creates a bigger, more endemic problem, I think, at the end of this. You know, come 2011, 2012, when we have all this government involvement, we can't pull it back out. I mean, are they looking at the end game of this?
I can't imagine them looking at the end game unless they're willing to confess to an end game of wanting to see the federal government involved in managing these businesses. I would just ask people, go to the website Democratic Socialists of America. That's dsausa.org. On there you'll see much of this agenda that's being brought out today. That appears to me to be their end game, and they don't want to admit to the socialist label, but it certainly is reflective of that website, and the Progressive Caucus here in the United States Congress is their arm in the United States Congress.
Yeah, I mean, Congressman, you know, I mean, that seems to me so overreaching and overarching. I mean, I'm getting so frustrated that we're all talking about this big socialism dialogue in this country, just as we're talking about this nationalization dialogue in this country. You know, at some point, constantly bringing that up is doing more damage to this economy than it's helping. If you want to say that the President of the United States is being too doom and gloom, well, then I think members of your party and plenty of pundits out there got to stop talking about how we're socializing the country. The bottom line is the country is in severe cardiac arrest. We need to do something about it. We may not like the programs, but if we do nothing, it's going to get worse.
I'm not advocating doing nothing. I'm advocating suspending capital gains taxes for 2 years and adopting a national sales tax, eliminate the IRS, take the tax off of all productivity, earnings, savings, investment in America, and let us pay our taxes when we consume. That does all of the things good that needs to be done. We can't have that debate because we're swept up in this current that people say we must do something. This is the only thing the majority will let us do, therefore we have to be for it. That's wrong. We have to be for real solutions, and we have to understand these that are being proposed do not have a track record of success. I challenge the other side, point to some historical model of a Keynesian success.
So are you advocating a fair tax then? Abolishing the current tax system
Absolutely.
and moving towards a fair tax?
And I would do that at midnight, December 31st, 2009. All at once, throw the master switch over and eliminate the IRS. If we take the tax off of all productivity, it would actually save the United Auto Workers, and it would save the American automakers. It would give a 28% marketing advantage to a U.S.-made, any U.S.-made product, but U.S.-made vehicles, for example. So a Mazda coming into the United States at $30,000, it would have to write a check for $39,000 to drive it off the lot. But a U.S.-made car, for the same price today, you'd write the check for $30,400. 28% marketing advantage. That's what we can do with a positive proposal.
Congressman Steve King from Iowa, thank you, Congressman. Appreciate your comments and your ideas. And Alexis, let me bring this around for all of us here, but Alexis,